Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The Browns held rookie minicamp this weekend in Berea, providing the first up-close look at quarterbacks Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel. The quarterbacks, as well as the other draft picks, also spoke to reporters. Then Monday, the Browns announced linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah won't play in 2025 as he continues to recover from a serious neck injury. Here to discuss, as always, is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. What's going on, Chud?
Well, what's going on, Scott, is that I'm glad we're not doing a podcast on the Cavaliers right now.
Oh my gosh,
That's
plenty of stuff to say about them. Nothing good.
no, it's brutal right now. But hey, breaking news today for us here during the off season is we talk some brownies here. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a huge surprise, but there's some finality to it, at least for 2025, that JOK is not going to play. So the Browns made a roster move, officially put him on the reserved, physically unable to perform list, and that rules him out for 2025. Now, Andrew Berry, the GM, was clear in his statement that they're not going beyond that when they talk about his football future. I want to get the quote exactly right here. Chud, give me a second. And then JOK had a statement inside the news release. But this is Andrew Berry. Jeremiah's health is of the utmost importance to us. And although he's made progress towards recovery, we've made the decision to place him on reserve pup. Means he won't play in 2025. Jeremiah is a full support of the team, and we expect him to continue to be part of the organization, even though he will not return to the field this year. We will not make any predictions on Jeremiah's football future at this time. We do note he's in good spirits. We'll continue to take the advice of world-class medical experts. And then JOK, who hasn't spoken since the injury, which was October. I mean, everybody remembers. Big collision with Derrick Henry. JOK's neck kind of crunches up. They put him on the stretcher, take him to the hospital, spends the night in the hospital, doesn't play the rest of the season. And just has been sporadic inside the building, hasn't talked to reporters. So this is a statement from him. And he's talking to the Browns fan base and supporters. Thanks for your patience in my silence. From day one, you embraced me as more than a player, but also as a brother and a young man with purpose. Grateful to the Browns for their full support and to the world-class doctors guiding me through recovery. While I won't suit up this season, I'm focused on what I can control by healing my mindset and my faith. The body may rest, but the calling never sleeps. I've given my heart to this game. I don't know what's next, but I'll continue trusting my medical team, serving the community, and backing my brothers on the field. So we just don't know, Chad. We know about 2025. We don't know beyond that. But you could kind of see this coming. The Browns re-signed Devin Bush Jr. in free agency. They added Jerome Baker, the Cleveland native. And then they go and draft Carson Schwessinger with the first pick of the second round. And he is a JOK-type player. So while Andrew Berry, the day of the draft, said no, it had nothing to do with JOK and his availability, I don't think that was correct. They were preparing for the real possibility that JOK would not play in 2025. And it's a big loss. Even though, like I said, we probably expected it. He's their third best defensive player behind Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. It's coming out, he had a Pro Bowl year in 2023. I thought he was off to a phenomenal start again last year before their injury. So it's a big blow. It's good that it happens from a planning perspective this early, this far before the season, but it's still significant.
Yeah, two follow-ups to that, Scott, and you pretty much answered it, but that was going to be my first thing was now it makes even more sense. And we thought about this when they did draft the linebacker in the second round like that. It just makes sense because it wasn't a position we were not necessarily targeting them to take that high.
That's exactly right. And I still don't love taking a linebacker that high, but you can certainly rationalize it and explain it by saying, okay, your best linebacker, the best guy in that second level of defense, isn't going to play this year, and you don't know if he's ever going to play again. So it makes sense to try to replace him. We could quibble about if he's worth 33, but that certainly goes into the thinking of taking Carson Schwessinger. There's no doubt about it.
So I mean, this franchise has made enough mistakes and decisions on their own. But boy, they're really snake bit in a lot of other areas as well. When you lose a player like this, Nick Chubb goes down with his injury. You feel like we were robbed of some more years off of him. I mean, it just doesn't go right for us.
No, it doesn't seem to very often. And, I think when you're struggling as a team, like the Browns have struggled for seemingly ever, with a couple of minor exceptions, it's easy to look at that. Other teams deal with injuries. Other teams have guys that this happens to, maybe not to the degree that the Browns do. I'll certainly give you that. That one of those text threads that I reference on here sometimes, somebody said, that's one of Andrew Berry's best draft picks is JOK. And then this happens to him, right? So even when you do something right, if you're Andrew Berry and you trade up and you get JOK in the second round, which obviously turned out to be a good pick. He's a playmaking linebacker. He can get to the quarterback. He can cover. He gets to the ball. He's just really good and really active. And we continue to see him progress throughout his time. He's a smart guy. He's really thoughtful. He's a good guy to talk to. He's really liked in the locker room. You can see guys gravitate to his locker. But so it's a really good pick. And then you don't get to see the full career. And I'm not saying he's done, but he's going to miss at least a year and a half in the prime of his career. And that's tough for an organization. Especially tough when the organization has struggled drafting and then gave up all those picks for Deshaun Watson. We talk about this roster needing an infusion of young talent. Well, they had that in JOK, and it has been taken away from them.
All right, let's get to the rookies in this past weekend, and I figured we'd start out with quarterbacks, and that was the plan until this breaking news. Let's go right to the linebacker position, and I know you had your eyes on Carson. What do you think of him seeing in person? Because I know you weren't a fan of that pick necessarily of him.
Yeah, it's nothing against him personally. He's just linebacker in general that high. I tell you what,
right.
Judd, he made a really good play. It's rookie minicamp. I would say there's not a ton of plays that stand out. And I paid a ton of attention to the quarterbacks, so I can tell you about a bunch of throws they made. But you're watching team drills and 7-on-7s and then 7-on-7 in the red zone, and Schlesinger picked off Dylan Gabriel at the goal line on Saturday, and it was one of the best plays of the weekend. Showed really good anticipation. Kevin Stefanski has talked about how intelligent Schlesinger is and pointed to that as an example. The play he made, he was able to read things and knew where he was supposed to be. He's a big guy. He moves well. I mean, that's what they like about him, and that's why they went out and drafted him. They feel, and so does he, that he's got a big upside. And the reason they feel that way, or one of the reasons they feel that way, is because we know he's a former walk-on who didn't start until his final year at UCLA. I think he had 12 total tackles or 17 total tackles up until this year. And then he leads the country. I think it's 136 in 2024. So they feel like he's just kind of tapping into his potential and is only, it's like the tip of the iceberg for him. So, again, it's rookie minicamp. How much do you want to read into it? But he certainly made one of the plays of the weekend. And that's a great sign if you're the Browns and you're looking for a guy to step in and, I would say right now, be the best player in that second line. Now, they bring back Jordan Hicks, who's a proven veteran, has called plays. He's lined up, he's been in the middle of that defense and other defenses. But they need Schlesinger to be the guy and be part of the future. And he called plays in college. I don't know if he'll do it right away in the NFL. I saw him line up in the middle sometimes during rookie minicamp. So I think he's a versatile guy.
All right, let's get to the quarterbacks now. And I know we've had plenty of big name quarterbacks. We don't need to name them. We know who they are. So you've had that feeling at rookie minicamp. But where did this kind of fall amongst, other quarterbacks of the past? I mean, how big of a deal was it? Meaning, could you feel the intensity just for a rookie minicamp with Shedeur there? I mean, did it feel different?
You know what, Chud? That's a good question. I don't know if I'd go intensity. I would say there's certainly an increased level of attention. And
attention.
right, just from a media perspective, you show up Friday and the quarterbacks didn't even talk till Saturday. And you show up Friday and ESPN's there and there's other national outlets. There's a bunch of cameras. And this is rookie minicamp where you don't usually get that level of media, the number of media. So you certainly feel that. And it carried over till Saturday, which, you get your diehards on Saturday, but it was way more than the diehards, right? During a normal rookie minicamp. This is way more than that. So from that aspect, there's no doubt about it. And then just talking to Shedeur Sanders, and we'll get into Dylan Gabriel, but it's about Shedeur, right? Because Shedeur's a giant name. Obviously, we know who his dad is. The story of the draft was his fall from, could have been a top 5 pick to the 5th round. There's a lot that goes into that and into the pick and into the coverage of Sanders. And I thought he did a great job from talking to us on Saturday to on the field. I think he handled everything really well. And I would say even from the time he got drafted at 144 and the Browns traded him, the press conference he did, the conference call he did with us right after that, through this weekend at rookie minicamp, I think he's done a fantastic job handling himself, whether it's on or off the field.
Let's start on the field. I do want to talk a lot about what he had to say. How did each guy look? And again, we're going to probably say this a bunch of times. Hey, it's rookie minicamp. What can you truly learn? But hey, it's what you get to see, and it's the first appearance, and it's the first impression. So, what were your first impressions of both quarterbacks on the field?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to phrase it, Chud, that you don't want to read too much into it, but it is important. It just is. It's my first chance to look at him up close, and we've talked about it before. I think it's really important to see a quarterback throw live. And the same thing is true for Dylan Gabriel. So I think there's a lot of value in that. And then these guys are in a quarterback competition. So every rep's going to matter. Now, an incompletion on day one of rookie minicamp doesn't matter the same as an interception in the dress rehearsal preseason game. But, it's this entire body of work. So having put that as a backdrop, I thought both quarterbacks looked good. I thought the way they throw certainly is NFL quality. And I felt that way about Sanders during the whole draft process. And there were questions about his arm strength, and I understand it, but I think he throws it more than good enough. And the issue he has from a throwing perspective, there's some wobblers. And we saw that at his pro day, just watching on TV. You could see some of those. He'd throw a pass to the flat, and it would wobble, and it wouldn't be that tight spiral. And you saw, I don't know, a handful of those, 5, 8 of those during the couple days of rookie minicamp. But when he needed to make a deep throw, he made it. And the ball is tight on those. He made several intermediate throws that I thought there was good velocity. And the ball placement is really good. No matter where he's throwing it, level of the field, the ball placement is really good. And that's one of his strengths, the accuracy. He completed 74% of his passes, I want to say, last year at Colorado. And there were a couple plays that stood out. One, he had a guy on for a deep touchdown. The guy was wide open, but he did a good job being able to spot him because there's a broken coverage, and he spotted the guy coming free, kind of like an out and up, and he hit him in stride for the touchdown. He made a really good throw in the red zone for a touchdown to Luke Floria, who is a mentor kid who went to Kent State, and he was there on a tryout, and the Browns signed him today. It's a really good throw. But I think the best throw I saw Sanders make was Friday, and I was standing behind. It was 11 on 11, and I'm standing behind the drills. So you get the kind of the all 22 view. And it's a designed rollout, or it feels like a designed rollout. He takes a couple steps to his right, and it's one of those where there's layers of guys, levels. There's a guy running underneath and then a guy deeper, and there's a bunch of bodies there. There's, offensive guys, defensive guys, and he fits this ball to the Bowling Green tight end, Harold Fannin Jr., on an out route, let's call it 20, 25-yard completion. And it's a tight window. Like, if you see him throw, you go, man, it's a bunch of guys here. Who's it going to? And it gets over the first level. He hits Fannin perfectly on that second level. So I was impressed with Sanders throwing the ball. I think he needs to get better from a sudden movement standpoint. And, part of that's footwork. The big concern for me from his Colorado days is that he takes too many sacks. I think he took 94 in his 2 years there. And part of that is you got to quicken up the decision-making process. And the other part is you have to have the movement to either get away from the pass rush or just run away from it or move just enough to create an opportunity to throw. And I think certainly he can be better in that area. And I don't know if that's going to show up at a rookie minicamp, but just watching him throw, I was impressed. And Gabriel, the question about him is his size. He's 5'11" and a narrow 205. And again, that's not going to show up in rookie minicamp either because you don't have full-out pass rushes. You don't have the biggest bodies because a lot of these guys are rookie tryouts. But when you just watch him throw it on air, the ball comes out good. I talked about Sanders wobblers. Gabriel doesn't have many of those. I saw one. It's a lot of tight spirals. He's got a nice motion over the top, right? Over the top you need, especially when you're that big, you got to come over the top. And he comes over the top. It's just a natural throwing motion. So my big takeaway is both these guys can throw it well enough at the NFL level. Now, does that guarantee success? Of course not. But I think that's one of the first boxes you check.
So let me ask you this. What are you, Scott, 6'4"?
Yep, that's what I tell people. It's probably more like 6'3.5". But
I know. I tell people I'm 6'2". It's more like 6'1" and 3/4 or whatever.
We round up here.
Well, yeah, that's right. That's right. So I'll never forget when Shaq signed with the Cavs. And I was there at the press conference, and then I was also there for interviews. And, there's different interviews you do with these teams, right? You either have press conferences where they're at a podium and you sit back in a chair, or you're right up by the players, right? So I'll never forget when I was right up next to Shaq because he's a big dude, obviously. When you see him on TV, you can tell he's a big dude. But when you're right next to him, you don't realize how big he is until you're right by him. So I'm setting you up for the Gabriel. You're almost 6'4", and I know that you don't really love quarterbacks that aren't tall in the NFL, but what was it like to be right by him? I guess can you kind of give us your perspective of, what – I know what his height is, but did he seem shorter than you thought, bigger? Like, you know what I'm trying to ask there?
I do. And I do try to size – it's especially quarterbacks, but you try to size a lot of guys up. But especially quarterbacks, and I do it at the combine. I like to, when the guys walk off the podium, I like to kind of look at him and go, okay, how does he compare? Gabriel is short. There's no getting around it. But I think I heard so many people warn me that he was going to be so short that I didn't look at him on Saturday and go, oh my gosh. Like, okay, he's short. I didn't think he's, exceptionally short. He's just short. So I wasn't like blown away. Oh my gosh, how's this guy going to do kind of thing. I knew he would be, he was, and part of it, Chud, is he's kind of got narrow shoulders, right? He's not imposing. And that doesn't mean he can't play in this league. It doesn't mean he can't be a success in this league. But it means he has to be great in so many other areas. So I wasn't stunned by the size. I didn't have any kind of extra reaction getting up close to him Saturday. But you do that with everybody. Like Dylan Sampson, the running back. He's about 5'8". So he looks short, right? But you see him on the field and you see how quick he is. Harold Fannin, I think they list him at 6'3". And I'm sure he is. But like he's not David Njoku. And we knew that. So I think he probably fits best is that maybe second tight end, a little off the ball, especially as a rookie. Sometimes you get those giant tight ends. He's not a giant tight end. He's more of a sleeker mover kind of tight end. And when you first get to see these guys in person, I think that is valuable.
So both of them, let's go to their interviews now. And I didn't watch it live like you did, but I did listen to both of them this morning. I was impressed. I followed Twitter over the weekend and seemed like both guys got rave reviews from most people that I saw that were there. But just listening this morning, I thought they both did a good job. And I was especially, I thought Sanders did a really nice job. I was impressed.
I agree, Chud, and I think it was a continuation, like I referenced a little bit before. He goes through that huge draft fall or slide, however you want to call it. And we talked to him, and he's really good. And it's all about just, I want the opportunity. He's not talking about how teams blew their chances and how, he's going to show them and stick it to them. It was about, hey, I'm going to prove the Browns right. And all I needed was a chance. And there's a lot of talented players in the draft. And he stayed to that message. The first quote I used in my story was, my job here isn't to prove people wrong. I prove myself right. I fully have self-belief. Whatever people say, that's just their opinion. He lives in his own mental space. I'm thankful for the opportunity. Things could have been a lot worse. So he understands it. And I think that's a really good perspective, especially when, there's a lot of chatter out there about him being entitled and coming off brash and arrogant. He, at least his quotes and being around him once or twice, he feels grounded, at least right now. And that, I would say the same thing about him coming to Northeast Ohio early and going to a bunch of high schools, and he threw to high school kids in the area and he worked out with them and he gave speeches. Like, who knows? Maybe it's just a PR thing, but it's all the right PR, and it doesn't come across as just a PR thing. He says that's who he is. He likes that the young minds haven't been corrupted yet. So, I think he's off to a really good start. He talked about, the battle isn't with the other three quarterbacks. It's me versus me. And, I don't have the exact quote, but that was the gist of it. That it's about, here it is. I just feel like in life and everything, it's just me versus me. I can't control any other decisions besides that. So I try to be my best self at all times. And I think that's the right attitude, right? Sure, you could come in and say, hey, I'm going to beat out Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, and I'm going to show him the best guy. I don't think that's the right tone for his situation. And I think he gets that. And then you get Gabriel, who, talked about the same thing. He wants to get 1% better every day. And it's about, it's about him and not looking outside the room. He said he loved when they picked Shadur Sanders. I want to find that quote because I think it was the money.
Yeah, I found
quote.
that made headlines for sure right there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it because of who it is. I think just for both of us, you can learn from one another. He did talk about, so, he was asked about the distractions and the attention. And he said, for me, life of simplicity is a life full of focus. Life of complexity comes with life with distractions. I'm focused. It's simple. I know what I want to accomplish. So I do feel like he's trying to distinguish himself. Like, hey, he can get all the pub. I'm going to be me. I'm going to keep everything simple. And it wasn't from a rivalry standpoint, but I think there was a distinction there. So I thought both guys came across well on the field and off the field in their interviews. And then things are going to get difficult this week, or especially on the field. It's Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco are going to be there for this next stage of the offseason program before we get to organized team activities in a couple of weeks. So all those reps that these rookies got, they probably don't get them anymore, right? They probably get a lot fewer reps. And then, assuming, the veterans are there, and then it's, oh my gosh, as fast as things are going in their heads, you look at Joe Flacco, who has run these plays a billion times, knows exactly where everyone's going to be. There's going to be a pretty big gap, I would assume, early in this process between, especially Flacco, but even Pickett. Pickett's been in the league for 3 years now, in how fast they process, how comfortable they are. And then these rookies who it's on them to get up to speed as fast as possible if they want to be true competitors in this four-way battle for the starting quarterback job.
Yeah. And for those that say, hey, who cares what they sound like in their media press conferences and who cares about that? We just care about on the field. Well, Scott, it's a big deal because we've seen other quarterbacks just, torpedo the wrong way with the off the field stuff. I think it's important how their character comes across and also how they handle being the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, because let's be honest, I mean, and I say this half kidding, but not really. It's one of the harder jobs in all of Cleveland.
Oh, there's no doubt about it, Chud. And it is important. It's not the end all be all. And more important is how you handle yourself with the coaches and how you handle yourself with your teammates. But it does matter. And it matters if you're the face of the franchise. How many times have we seen it? And you said earlier we don't need to go through all the lists, but there's guys that didn't handle it well. Baker had his issues in front of the media. Johnny certainly did. Johnny's were more away from the field. But that stuff matters, and I think it matters more for Shedeur, just given everything that was talked about through the entire draft process, and then 3 days of the draft.
Hey, did you bring up the Tom Brady part with Shedeur?
I did.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
What about his dad? He mentioned a lot of his. What was his quote about his dad, Deion?
Yeah, I thought there were two good quotes about Deion. One was that he gave him the opportunity to do what he's doing. Right? He put him in the spot. He trained him. He coached him, and now it's up to Shedeur. Shedeur's the one. He said, "I'm the one throwing the passes, taking the hits. It's on me." But I had the chance, and he credited Deion with giving him that. But he also said that 99% of hatred is toward Pops, and then I'm just his son, so it really comes from that. And he said he's told Deion that too. And it was kind of these contrasting generations that the young people don't have any really preconceived notions about Deion Sanders, where people probably my age and your age, you're close enough to me, Chud. You grew up with Deion Sanders. You knew Deion Sanders. You knew the personality. I'm sure he rubbed people the wrong way, right? He did the dancing, as he scored touchdowns. And all those things where I know some of my buddies are worried about the whole Deion factor. And so I don't know if 99%, but I'm sure Shedeur's got a point there that what has he done to make people mad? It's be the son of Deion, who, for whatever reason, had made people mad at some point in the last 30 years.
Hey, could you please help us out with Numbergate, Scott? Because I mean, boy, was this just city up in arms over number 2 and number 12.
Chud, how many times have we talked about things that I don't care about? Right? Not talked about, but I bring up, right? Like I don't really care about uniforms or mascots or whatever it is. Yeah. Numbers is somewhere on that list. Not at the top. Right? But yeah, so Shedeur was number 2 in college. I'm sure he would have wanted number 2. DeAndre Carter, I was going to call him DeAndre Hunter. That's a Cavs player. DeAndre Carter, the veteran receiver. Right, I got to keep track of my DeAndres. The veteran receiver, kick returner.
Yep.
Had taken number 2, and the Browns. I think the Browns are careful. They want to give, they want to give their veterans choices before they give the rookies. So he had number 2. Shedeur took number 12. He said that was the best one available. And then he joked that he was asked, well, you're going to make DeAndre an offer for number 2. And he said his 5th round signing bonus wasn't big enough. So he was just going to sit with number 12.
Yeah. Let's wrap up the QBs with Gabriel with number 1. Do you think he knew he was getting picked there? He didn't really answer it, but just you get the sense that he knew he was getting picked.
I do. There's a weird video where he acted like a bird was telling him that he was going to go to the Browns at 94. And how the internet is. It's tough to tell if that's before the draft but I did get the sense, and just listening to the Browns talk about him and how much they liked him in the pre-draft process, and then Gabriel talking about how the feeling was mutual. I believe the Browns had conveyed that if he was there at 94 and they still had a 94th pick, and they hadn't taken a quarterback yet, that he was going to be their guy. That's the sense I got.
Real quick on this, because we got to move on to some other things before we wrap up. But is there a situation with him in the weather he's playing in?
Yeah, you know what? I watched. He did like a 1.5-minute interview before a bowl game, and I think it might have been the game against Ohio State. And he's just talking to this reporter, and they're talking about stuff in Hawaii, and he goes on a little bit of a, he makes the case for football to be played on really nice grass fields or in domes. And he said, wouldn't everybody love that? Nobody wants to sit out in the snow. And you have to keep in mind, this is a guy that grew up in Hawaii, still lives in Hawaii. So it got some run when he got picked by the Browns. Oh my gosh, he's going to Cleveland. blah, blah. He said, you got to listen to the whole interview. And I did. It wasn't like it was a super long interview, at least what was put out on the woman's social media account. But you could tell it was a lighthearted, they're just kind of going back and forth. So, I think that's probably much ado about nothing. Now, when you're a short quarterback, but he does have a good arm. He doesn't have a huge arm. When you're a short quarterback with maybe not the biggest arm, those things matter when the weather is an issue, right? So I think from on the field, you have to pay attention to that. I don't think he's upset to be in Cleveland. I think he'll be fine playing outside. He played at Oklahoma. Played at Oregon. It's not like the weather's always great there. But he did say that at some point in the last year.
Scott, the big news, though, over the weekend, Scott Petrak vomits all over the – oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. That wasn't you. That was the first pick.
Yeah, Mason Graham with a little –
what's going on? Huh?
Yeah.
What's going on? Vomit.
Yeah, a little boot and rally, which, I've done in my day. Kevin Stefanski said he just had too much lunch. He said the wings were too good. And, we didn't talk to Graham after the incident, but that's what it felt like. Like, I remember 2 years ago, DeJuan Jones, he threw up at the at rookie minicamp, but you could see him laboring. And he had come off an injury, so he wasn't in great shape. I happened to be watching, and you could tell he was really struggling to get through the drills, and his shape, he was out of shape or not at the shape he needed to be in. And then he vomits. Where Graham had the incident, and then when I checked in on him a little bit later, I'm watching him go through a drill, looks completely fine. He hosed out his own helmet, put it on, and went back to the drills. So I don't think it was, man, this guy's out of shape. I think it was, yeah, he ate too much or something didn't sit right with him.
Yeah. So real quick, maybe just go rapid fire on each guy, starting with Graham and then going to Fannin Jr. and the two running backs. Just give us a little Petrak's take on, what you saw on each guy, just kind of a little rapid fire on each one.
Yeah, Graham looks good. The only time I really paid close attention to him was in these one-on-one, or wasn't even one-on-one, it was individual drills. Good quickness, good hands. It's going to be fun to watch him go against guys like Joe Bitonio and Wyatt Teller. Ethan Posick in there, right? Guys on the interior, veterans, see how he holds up against those guys. Fannin shows up, and I was paying so much attention to the quarterbacks, but you notice who's catching the ball, and he was catching a lot of them. A really fluid athlete. That's what jumped out to me about him. The running backs, Quinshon Judkins looks like an NFL player. He's a big dude, and he's quick. They do these quickness drills through the bags. And Dylan Sampson's 5'8", so he's 4 inches shorter, and I think Judkins won. Like, it was a real tight race, but I would give the edge to Judkins, which just shows you how quick he is to be able to do these lateral drills through the bags and then have some burst. I really like him. Sampson, you can see the explosion with him. I saw him catching passes out of the backfield. So, I think there were a lot of good first impressions made by all the draft class guys. And, they should look good, right? They're the draftees. They're going against tryout guys and undrafted free agents. But I think Andrew Berry probably walked away going, hey, I like my draft class.
And you got two rookie running backs there, so you got to go back to give 92.3 the fan credit for the interview with Andrew Berry. But it looks unlikely that Chubb's going to be back. Is that, do you buy that? Do you think there's still a shot? What do you think?
I think something would have to change drastically for Nick Chubb to come back. And things in Andrew Berry on 92.3, I think the quote was increasingly unlikely. And things have been building to this, Chud. It started right after the season when Berry left the door open for Chubb to leave in free agency. Then they don't sign him before or during the beginning stages of free agency. Chubb remains available, and they still don't sign him. Then they draft two running backs, pretty high, right? 36 and then the 4th round. Then they restructure Jerome Ford's contract. So he takes a pay cut, but they guarantee the salary. I think it's $1.7 million in 2025. So 3 of your running backs. And you really only carry 3 to game day, right? Maybe 4 on your roster if the 4th guy's a special teamer, which Nick Chubb doesn't play special teams. So where does Nick Chubb fit? Where does he fit on a roster that's trying to get younger? That might not expect to win this year. I know the goal is to win, but we know this roster is in a transition. I just don't see where Nick Chubb fits, and everything has been leading up to this, all the moves, all the discussion. So the scenario I see for a possible return would be if he does not sign somewhere else, Quinshon Judkins gets hurt, and okay, now there's opportunities and carries for Nick Chubb. And this is assuming that he is better physically than he was last year coming off the major knee reconstruction, because he wasn't the same player last year. Now, I've seen him squat a ton of weight this offseason. I've seen him do these hurdle jumps, which is impressive and shows explosion. So maybe he is going to be better than he was last year. That's the hope. And I think it's a reasonable expectation coming off, you give another year off that surgery. But I think that would have to happen for there to be any chance that he comes back. And that would, in order that happen, he would have to not sign with someone else before then.
Scott, did we talk about Deontay Johnson last time? I can't remember.
I don't know, Chud. They all run together. Deontay Johnson, right? Yeah, I mean, they signed him. They needed to. I think we did, Chud. It's because it was after the draft. They needed to because they didn't draft any receivers.
Yeah,
it makes sense, right? But there's questions. He's coming off a bad year. Yep.
Yeah. All right. How about the news with Devin Bush? Any concern there? The off the field issue?
Yeah, I mean, it was a domestic incident. According to the police reports, he and his, I don't know if it was wife or girlfriend, got into it. He smashed her phone. She says it went beyond that. He got arrested for simple assault and harassment. It's a misdemeanor. So, from a legal perspective, it's not crazy serious. But we know the NFL takes any kind of domestic situation seriously. There's certainly a chance that he could face discipline from the team or the league. We haven't heard anything yet about that. Usually it takes a while. He hasn't had his court date yet. So it's concerning. Right now I would say I expect him to be on the team. We saw, the Browns kind of stand by Mike Hall Jr. last year. And he had a similar, with details that sounded much worse from whatever you can read in a police report. So obviously you never want to see that. But he was in the building last week.
All right, boy, this is a nice beefy off-season pod. That's it for me, unless you have something else.
I got two things real quick, Chud.
All right.
They signed, they made some roster moves today, and they signed three of the tryout receivers. But they also signed two veteran safeties, Rayshon Jenkins and DeMonte Casey. And they've both been in the league for a long time. Casey's spent the last 3 years with the Steelers. So this was a position that I thought got overlooked as far as needs. They cut Juan Thornhill after a couple of bad years with him. After he signed a pretty big free agent contract, he didn't live up to it. And then Rodney McLeod retired. So you're missing two of your top three safeties. They didn't draft anybody. Like, oh my God. And it just felt like they were going to make a move or two. And that's what they did. And they did it Monday, signing both these guys. So now you have Grant Delpit, you have Jenkins, you have Casey, and then you have Ronnie Hickman. And then Chris Edmonds would be, I would say, the fifth guy. So we'll see how that plays out. But, I would not have felt comfortable if I were the Browns just handing a starting job to Hickman. And we know the Browns play so much three safety packages under Jim Schwartz that you needed to add some veterans and some experience. And that's what they did. So I think that was significant. And then the only other thing is, Chud, it's schedule week. So
yes,
right? So it's coming out Wednesday. We'll reconvene. We'll try to do another one of these and break down the schedule. But before we get the full release Wednesday, tomorrow, we're taping this on Monday late afternoon. So Tuesday morning, the NFL is going to release the London games or announce the London games. So we should know tomorrow morning who the Browns are playing in London. The Browns are the home team and what date that is.
Yeah. What's your guess? Maybe the Vikings?
I mean, that's the rumor out there is it's the Vikings in October. So we'll see. Sometimes those are true. Sometimes, they wind up being true. Sometimes they aren't. But I don't have any inside intel. I'm looking for it, but I haven't gotten any yet.
Yeah. I can't imagine they would do a division game in London.
No, I do think the Browns have say over. I think they can rule out a couple games. We don't want to lose this home game. So I think that narrows the choices of who it would be. Now, I did see a rumor was that the Vikings were looking to go back to back in England or overseas. I think it was Dublin Steelers, Browns, London. And it's interesting. I don't know if you'd want to play a team that's gotten kind of comfortable being overseas. The Browns would make a quick trip in. It'd be interesting to see if the Browns tried to fight that at all.
Yeah. I'd have to research that, Scott, but I feel like I've heard it somewhere. I don't know, but I can't imagine that it would be fair to any NFL team to take away one of their home division games.
I'm with you. I'm trying to remember if like Jacksonville plays the most games overseas, and I don't know if they've ever played anybody else over there or not. Yeah, it doesn't seem fair. And then some of these teams you only get so often in your hometown. Like if the Packers and I don't have the opponents in front of me, but like the Packers only come here so often. I don't think the Browns want to give up a Packers game.
Yeah.
It's like once every 8 years, so you got to be kind of careful about that.
Sure, no doubt. Yeah, and then the very first game of the year will be Eagles Cowboys on NBC.
NBC, yes, sir. So they're going to all leak out over the next couple of days until Wednesday night when you get the full release.
Right, no doubt. Okay, yeah, we could do that. That's always a fun one to talk about. So we can do a quick pod at the end of the week talking about the schedule.
Sounds great, buddy. Why don't you go watch some softball? And I'm going to go back to, I got to update my JOK story. So I appreciate it, buddy. All right. Thank you, Chud. This has been another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. And you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks.